I had a moment last spring that frightened me. I was telling Catherine about a student I had taught in 1978, a boy named, and I remember this clearly, Thomas Aldridge. Quiet, very bright, difficult home situation. I described him for nearly 5 minutes. His handwriting, the books he liked, a poem he wrote that I kept for 2 years. And then I could not remember where I had put my reading glasses, which I was wearing. Catherine laughed. I laughed. But I stood there for a moment, afterward, with that small, cold thought. How much of this is normal? How much of this is the beginning of something else? My name is Dorothy Sinclair. I am 89 years old. Former English teacher, widow of James Sinclair, reader, writer, worrier, in that order. And today I want to talk about my mind, about what I have done to keep it working, and what I believe, not as science, but as a woman who has lived inside her own head for a very long time, makes the difference. But first I want to say something about fear. The fear of losing the mind is one of the particular fears of old age. I understand it. I have felt it. I feel it sometimes still. But I have also watched people make the fear itself a problem. People who became so anxious about every forgotten word, every misplaced object, every name that took a moment longer to retrieve, that the anxiety became its own kind of cloud over the mind. The worry about losing your mind is not the same as caring for it. The worry is corrosive. The caring is constructive. Everything I am going to tell you is about the caring, not the worrying. The distinction matters enormously. The first thing is so obvious I am almost embarrassed to say it. I never stopped reading. Not as a hobby, not as a leisure activity, as a need. The way some people need to walk in the open air, I need to read. During my teaching years, the reading was built in. Every syllable, every text, every novel had to be read and reread before I taught it. When I retired, I was afraid the reading would slow down, that without the professional necessity, I would let it soften into something casual. So I made a rule, 1 new book a fortnight, always. Not magazine articles, books, long ones preferably. The kind you have to hold in mind over several days. The brain, I believe, needs exactly what a classroom needs. Something new to learn, a reason to pay attention, a question that does not yet have an answer. Long-form reading provides all three. There is something specific about reading a long book that I want to name, because it is different from reading short things. When you read a novel, or a serious work of history, or a long biography, you are required to hold a world in mind over many days. Characters, chronologies, arguments, the texture of another person's thinking. You carry it with you when you are not reading. It lives in the background of the day. That is exercise, genuine exercise, the kind that keeps the architecture of the mind intact. I believe this more than almost anything else I am going to say to you today. The second thing, I stayed argumentative. James will tell you, he would tell you if he were here, that this was never a problem for me. But I mean it in a specific way. I argue with books. I disagree with the newspaper. I write in the margins. I challenge what I read, what I see, what I am told. Passive consumption of information is very different from active engagement with it. One slides through the mind, the other digs in. My grandchildren argue with me sometimes about things they have read, about the world, about history. I encourage it. I enjoy it. James always said I enjoyed it perhaps too enthusiastically. He was not entirely wrong. But there is something that happens in a real argument, a genuine, respectful argument, where you have to actually think, quickly, precisely, hold your position and assess the other one at the same time. That is excellent work for a mind. Do it often. I want to add something to this. The argument does not have to be with a person. Some of my best arguments have been with books I disagree with authors who made me angry, with historians who got it wrong. When you argue with a book, you have to articulate your own position clearly enough to oppose it. You have to find the flaw in the argument. You have to hold two competing ideas in your mind simultaneously. That is the kind of thinking that keeps the mind sharp, and you can do it entirely alone on a quiet afternoon with a book and a pencil. Third, I stayed social, even when it was the last thing I wanted. After James died, there were months when the idea of being around people felt like noise. Too much noise, too many things to track, conversations that required me to be present when I felt very absent. I canceled things. I declined invitations. I told myself it was temporary. Catherine noticed. She did not say anything directly. Instead, this is very Catherine, she organized a small dinner at her house, 4 people, people I liked, gave me very little room to decline without explaining myself. I went. I did not want to go. I stayed for 4 hours. I laughed 3 times, genuinely, at something Marcus, a retired doctor, Catherine's neighbor, said about a holiday gone badly wrong. I could feel something restarting in me, like a room that had been closed opening back up. Social engagement is not optional for the mind. The brain was made for conversation, for reading faces, for tracking stories, for being surprised by what someone else says. None of that happens inside your own head. Go find the people, even when you are tired. I want to say something about why this matters specifically for the mind, not just for well-being. When you are in a real conversation, a live one with a person present, you are doing several things at once. You are listening. You are processing. You are formulating a response. You are reading the other person's face and adjusting what you say based on what you see. You are navigating the relationship in real time. That is extraordinarily complex cognitive work, and it is exactly the kind of work that keeps the brain functioning. The people who withdraw from social life in old age are not choosing peace. They are choosing a kind of cognitive poverty. I do not say that harshly. I came close to it myself. I say it because it is true. Fourth, I sleep. I take this very seriously. This was not always true. In my teaching years, I was guilty of treating sleep the way ambitious people often do, as something to be borrowed against. I will sleep when the term is over. I will sleep properly this weekend. I did not sleep properly on weekends. There was always something. James always said, "Dorothy, You think on 4 hours what you would think better on 8. He was right. I knew he was right. I continued not sleeping properly until my 60s. By 70 I had learned 8 hours, same time each night, the room dark, no reading in bed after 10, that was the rule. The mind consolidates memory during sleep. It clears out what does not matter. It repairs. And I believe, though I have no science for this beyond my own experience, that the quality of my thinking the next day is directly connected to how I slept the night before. The days when I wake rested, the connections come more easily, the associations form, the words arrive when I want them. The days when I have not slept well, everything is a little slower, a little further away. If you are cutting your sleep short, and I say this with all the authority of someone who did it for too long, you are not being efficient. You are borrowing from a loan you will eventually have to repay. Fifth, I did not retire my sense of purpose. This is the one I feel most strongly about. I stopped teaching in 1997, 34 years. I was 60. I thought I was ready. In the first year of retirement, I noticed something I had not anticipated. I was fine. But I was fine the way a wound is fine when it is healing, tender underneath. Teaching had given me purpose I had never had to generate for myself. The students gave it to me. Every September, new group, new reasons. Without them, I had to ask, what am I for? I did not ask immediately. I cleaned the house. I organized things. I was very organized for about 8 months. Then James said to me, Dorothy, what do you want to be doing a year from now? I had not thought about it that way. I had been thinking about what I was no longer doing. Within a year, I was running a reading group at the local library, then a second one. Then I started mentoring younger teachers informally. Purpose keeps the mind directed. A mind without direction turns in on itself, and a mind turned in on itself has nothing new to process. Feed your mind new problems to solve. That is what purpose does. The purpose does not have to be grand. It does not have to be recognized or rewarded. It simply has to be real. Something that makes you need to think tomorrow. Something that makes tomorrow different from today. I have been writing in the mornings for several years now. Not for publication, not for anyone. Just the discipline of putting the day's thinking into sentences. That writing keeps something alive in me that I do not want to let go. The requirement to be precise, to find the right word, to say exactly what I mean. I recommend it, a notebook, a pencil, every morning, even if only for 10 minutes. Sixth, I did not worry about memory in a way that made it worse. I know people who became terrified of forgetting things. After a certain age, every forgotten name becomes a crisis. Every lost word fills them with dread. I understand that fear. I had that moment with my reading glasses. But there is a difference between attention and anxiety. Attention to the mind is healthy. Anxiety about it creates a state of chronic stress that is itself bad for the brain. I forget things. Thomas Aldridge is crystal clear in my memory. My glasses were on my face. That is just how the mind works at 89, or at 49 in some cases. It is selective. It protects the things that mattered and releases the ones that did not. Trust your mind and care for it. Those are not the same as fearing it. The mind under chronic fear does not work better, it works worse. It spends its resources on the monitoring of itself rather than on the actual work of thinking. Let it work. Give it good materials to work with, books, people, sleep, problems to solve, and then trust it. That is the best arrangement you can make with your own mind, and it is, I have found, a very workable one. There is a letter on the table near the window. James wrote it to me on our 40th anniversary. I have never forgotten where it is, in 49 years, not once. Maybe that tells you something about what the mind holds on to. The things that matter most, they are extraordinarily safe. The mind is not indiscriminate. It keeps what deserves to be kept. It releases what does not. I find that comforting. At 89, I find that deeply comforting. If any of this helped, or if you have questions, leave a comment. Tell me what you do to keep your mind alive. I learn from you as much as you may learn from me. If you know someone who is worried about their mind as they get older, share this with them. Worry is one of the least useful things you can do for your brain. Give them something more useful instead.